Alright guys, welcome back to the Rated R for Wrestling channel with Anthony again, and we have another installment of Attitude Era moments that went way too damn far. You remember last video was all about Kai and Tai, Val Venus Choppy Choppy PP video. This one is all about the Ministry of Darkness. I mean, let me preface this first. I always like to preface these videos by saying Attitude Era is the best era in wrestling history, hands down. So much amazing stuff happened here, but along with all that amazing stuff, you got some really crazy, wild things that may to some have gone too far. It may have just been terrible, ridiculous, or just a ton of damn fun. Here we have one of the biggest, if not the biggest, superstar of all time, at least the greatest gimmick of all time, the Undertaker. This Attitude Era moments, all about Undertaker and the Ministry of Darkness, a group of superstars along with the Undertaker that would run menace over the entire WWF roster at the time, and Undertaker's look will begin to change as he became part of the Ministry of Darkness, going a lot more satanic and all that to go with the time period and the Attitude Era itself. So this is what we got here in Undertaker in the Ministry of Darkness, along with the Acolytes, Midian, the Brood, guys like that, Viscera. This is where we have to see all that and their crazy initiations into the group, where they would drag a superstar to the back, beat the living hell out of him, and then the next week he's part of the Ministry. So we have a couple of moments here during this time period with the Ministry of Darkness doing outlandish and just wild things, and at the end we'll see the biggest swerve that we never thought we would see. So we're gonna get to that in a moment. Remember guys, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. I appreciate all the support and all the viewership you guys have been giving me. Always tons of fun. Always like doing these types of videos. The Val Venus one was a fun one. Let's get into the Ministry of Darkness, all the craziness that went on, and these handful of moments that were just way too far. Okay, so the Ministry of Darkness all started when Paul Bearer decided to turn on Kane and join back with the Undertaker, turning Undertaker a heel for the first time in a few years. This is where the Ministry of Darkness would begin. He called it a plague of evil that would be unleashed on the entire WWF. So the first feud would start with The Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin for that coveted WWF Championship. So this first moment in the Ministry of Darkness that went too far is The Undertaker hitting Steve Austin with a shovel one week, allowing The Rock to defeat him for the WWF title, costing him the championship. And you would see Austin have concussion-like symptoms, be in the hospital. So he would later be abducted by Undertaker and Paul Bearer. Then at first they would begin to try to bury him alive, because they had a buried alive match leading up at In Your House Rock Bottom to see who would be in the 1999 Royal Rumble. So they tried to bury him alive, but then they decide, let's switch things up and let's take him into this shady looking spot and try to embalm him. So unconscious, Stone Cold Steve Austin lays lifeless on like a slab of meat on a table as Paul Bearer watches on as Undertaker takes a knife, raises it up, says a bunch of crazy Latin demonic things, and is about to stab it right in the chest of Stone Cold Steve Austin. When who would show up? Kane, to save Stone Cold Steve Austin here, beat down The Undertaker, and save him from being embalmed by The Undertaker. Now, why this is so wild is because this is another one of those things that WWF would like to erase from their history. They don't really call back on it a lot. They don't show a lot of highlights of it. It's still on the network in terms of the Monday Night Raw episode, unlike the Val Venus stuff. But with this going down, it was just such a jarring thing to look at in terms of it's professional wrestling, and you literally have one guy trying to stab the other one as he's unconscious on a table through the chest, thus killing him. Is pretty wild stuff, but it's just the beginning of where we're getting to in these moments, these couple of moments that The Undertaker and the Ministry of Darkness had that went entirely way too far during the Attitude Era. So with this happening, Kane getting involved, stopping Undertaker from embalming Stone Cold Steve Austin, obviously the feud continues. Stone Cold and Kane against The Undertaker, brawling back and forth. They try to put Kane in a body bag and send him off to the insane asylum. Undertaker gets hit by a shovel, a little bit of revenge from Stone Cold Steve Austin hitting Undertaker in the face with a shovel, then putting a fake Kane mask on The Undertaker, having him sent to the insane asylum. Thus, right before their buried alive match at Rock Bottom, that Monday Night Raw, The Undertaker would exact his revenge for being sent to the insane asylum. Stay with me, I know this is getting confusing. From being sent to the insane asylum by Stone Cold Steve Austin, then putting him on what Jim Ross would continuously call a symbol basically crucifying him in front of a live audience. Stone Cold Steve Austin hanging above the rampway on the Undertaker's symbol, which looks a ton like a cross, especially the way he was set up on that symbol. Stone Cold Steve Austin was very much depicted the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So obviously, in terms of optics, it wasn't a good look, something that definitely would not pass today. It didn't really pass back then either. It was something that was very shock TV. The Undertaker standing in front of a crucified Stone Cold Steve Austin right before their pay-per-view Buried Alive match. It's just something that you didn't think you would see, something you probably never see again, something you probably shouldn't have seen back then. Don't get me wrong, it fit the character, but in terms of shock value, you got what you wanted out of it. It's just a nuts scene to see, and WWE's persistence in trying to call it a symbol rather than what it actually was, a cross and a crucifixion. We saw it in ECW, WWF did it. This was a little bit too far, especially something that didn't age well, and it's why it's here and part of this Ministry of Darkness gathering of moments that went too far. Okay, so this next moment in the Ministry of Darkness's run is an interesting one. So you have, for weeks, Vince McMahon was saying that the Undertaker character was taking his gimmick entirely way too far, thought he was actually Satan and all that. Now, Undertaker would later reveal that he answers to a higher power, a mysterious figure, a higher power that nobody knew who he was. So the issues begin to increase between Undertaker and Vince McMahon, to the point where Ministry of Darkness leaves a burning symbol, which is pretty much another cross, on the front lawn of the McMahon estate. So this prompts Vince McMahon to send the Big Boss Man after the Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell match at WrestleMania 15. And if you're not familiar with what happens here, go back and watch WrestleMania 15 for this outlandish, bizarre moment, and something that WWF has definitely tried their best to erase from the history books. Now, what happens here is you have Undertaker defeating Big Boss Man, the Brood coming down from the rafters, landing on top of the Hell in a Cell, and dropping a noose down for the Undertaker to hang the Big Boss Man. A public hanging live on pay-per-view. Imagine seeing that in your lifetime. That's what we got to see here. And they actually hung the guy in the cage. The cage went up awkwardly enough. The Brood are kind of up there mid in, you know, stuck in between with the cage going up, but they hung a guy. They literally did. I mean, think about it. They hung a guy on pay-per-view. WWF, the Ministry of Darkness, Undertaker, this whole storylines just keep getting crazier and crazier, going further and further, pushing the envelope, giving you really that shock factor. And you got a hanging of a man on WrestleMania 15, something WWF will never reference ever again in their history. So with that out of the way, this final moment of the Ministry of Darkness that went too far is a bit of an interesting one, because when I saw it live, I thought it was a lot of fun. Now, the Undertaker kept saying he had the key to Vince McMahon's heart and soul, so he had somebody, he kidnapped somebody. It was later found out to be the daughter of Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, a young Stephanie McMahon, abducted by the Ministry of Darkness, held captive by Undertaker and his minions, his disciples of destruction. So, who does Vince McMahon call and go to in his time of need? None other than his greatest rival, Stone Cold Steve Austin, to ask for the help of the Rattlesnake to save his daughter Stephanie. Then what we get is Stephanie again, somebody else tied to the symbol, which is a cross, the Undertaker symbol, in the ring, and they're performing a marriage ceremony to marry Stephanie McMahon, tied to the Undertaker symbol, a cross, held against her will, being forced to marry the Lord of Darkness, the Undertaker, in some type of satanic ritual, a joining of these two spirits in a really demonic way. As this wedding ceremony is going down on Monday Night Raw, obviously, you know, wrestling weddings never really turn out the way they're supposed to. So here comes Stone Cold Steve Austin to say that they laying waste to everybody in the ring with chairs, and he saves Stephanie McMahon, who hugs him, and he's reluctant to accept the hug from Stephanie McMahon. Now, if that's not crazy enough, obviously seeing something like that, a young girl being forced to marry some type of satanic figure on a cross in the middle of the ring, pretty wild. Obviously, I thought it was a lot of fun when you saw Stone Cold Steve Austin come out and smash everybody with the chairs, and do the big rescue spot. It was kind of interesting, but a lot of fun to watch live. But if you watch it now, it's pretty crazy to see that actually happened on live television on the USA Network. And not only did that happen, but this ended up leading to the greater power revealed to be actually Vince McMahon himself, where it was been stated before by Bruce Pritchard it was supposed to be Christopher Daniels, the fallen angel, but they decided not to, and it became Vince McMahon in the end. So he kidnapped his own daughter for whatever reason to have Stone Cold save her. I mean, a lot of hoopla there with a weird twist that didn't make a ton of sense. But those are the moments that this Ministry of Darkness had that went completely way too far and involved a lot of religious imagery and a lot of demonic stuff going on. Obviously, you saw the look of Undertaker during this time was very demonic, and a whole new look for the Undertaker as this heel in the Ministry of Darkness that would eventually become the corporate ministry. So let's look back at these crazy moments. First, you had the attempted involvement of Stone Cold Steve Austin by the Undertaker. You had the live crucifixion of Stone Cold Steve Austin by the Undertaker on his symbol. Then you had a live hanging on pay-per-view at a WrestleMania nonetheless of the Big Boss Man by the Undertaker and the Brood. Then you had a young woman tied to a symbol and being forced against her will to take part in a satanic ritual and join these two in unholy matrimony, as they said, Paul Bearer said. Then, in the cherry on top, is Vince McMahon being revealed to be the higher power and working with the Undertaker the whole time. But guys, again, I have to say, the Attitude Era was the best era in professional wrestling, the most fun any of us have ever had. If you didn't see it live, go back and watch it. It's a ton of fun. If any of this stuff is still on the network, try to watch it. If not, try to watch it somewhere else on the internet. I'm pretty sure you can find it. You saw the clips and the pictures in here, but go see it for yourself in real time. Now, again, great era, but we got a lot of crazy shit like we got here. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that I'm going to go through in these upcoming videos when it comes to Attitude Era moments that went too far. This is only episode 2. We're on a hell of a run, episode 2, and these two crazy things we went through, the choppy PP and all this Ministry of Darkness, Crucifixion, cross stuff. Guys, but I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you check out that best and worst of the Royal Rumble and the best and the worst of the War Games videos. Make sure you check those out. Check out the Kind Type Val Venus video as well. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Drop a like on this one. Let me know in the comment section what you guys thought of all these moments. If you saw them live, if you saw them after the fact, if you're gonna go watch them now, let me know what you think. Was there as much shock and awe factor as you thought they would be? Do you think they're okay? Do you think they went too far? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.